No, but I mean, she's sort of she's a little bit of a villain in ways, but I mean, I think she's delicious and fun, and so it was nice to just like, you know, as we were talking about facades, just like let all the facades down and just really just like work on disappointment across the board. It was like everything that I tried not to be growing up. I just got to be in this film. Really low expectations.
Yeah,
You
really.
guys will love
It's gonna be
it.
terrible. You're
It's
gonna hate
like,
it.
Wow.
Because I'm, you know, just really a toddler at heart, and I thought I'm in. For me, that was one of the first meetings with Paul because in the script she was wearing, you know, skin tight, low cut, short dresses because she was this mom who wanted attention, who, you know, all the other parents were like, oh God, here she is. She's so over the top, and I just felt like that was really tired, and it was also a sort of simplistic version of who this woman could be.
Hey friends, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. Let's talk about the morality clause. This has been a hot topic lately. Did one exist, or was it never part of the deal? Early on, there were questions about whether a morality clause was included in the contract between Colleen Hoover and Justin Baldoni when he purchased the rights to her books. The theory was that if such a clause existed and was broken, Colleen Hoover could regain the rights to her work. It was an interesting idea, suggested by someone in the industry as a way to make sense of an already confusing situation. However, Justin Baldoni's legal team has made it clear there was no morality clause in his contract with Colleen Hoover. He owns the rights to It Ends With Us, and it starts with us outright, without any contractual loopholes. The sale is final. Colleen Hoover will never have the rights to adapt these books into films, nor can she involve any other production companies. Wayfarer Studios retains full control over making the sequel, regardless of the ongoing drama surrounding Blake Lively. Now, speaking of Blake, she has openly admitted over the years that she likes to take charge of projects she's hired for. She often pretends to be just an actress, but then finds ways to exert control over the production. You saw in the clip earlier that when she was cast as Emily in A Simple Favor, she didn't agree with the original wardrobe choices for the character. Instead of sticking to the director's vision, she changed Emily's entire look, insisting that she wear pantsuits throughout the film. Blake Lively didn't have a morality clause either. But she managed to secure a different kind of clause, one that gave her significant influence. When she used that power, she essentially took control of a film. So, that brings us to the big question. Is this really about morality clauses? Or is it just a form of manipulation? When Blake Lively signed her contract for It Ends With Us, she was granted a vanity credit, something usually given to lead actors as a prestige move. Actresses are often given executive producer credits without needing to contribute much to the actual filmmaking process. But for Blake Lively, a simple vanity credit wasn't enough. She wanted full control. She wanted to oversee directing, wardrobe, script revisions, editing, marketing, everything. She didn't want to answer to anyone. She wanted to be in charge of every detail. Now, let's talk about retaliation. If someone raises valid complaints about workplace issues, retaliation can take many forms: intimidation, unfair treatment on set, public smearing, or even more extreme actions like harassment or stalking. But Blake took a different approach. She leveraged the retaliation clause against Justin Baldoni, Wayfarer Studios, and Sony. Using this clause, anytime someone denied her a request, she claimed it was illegal retaliation. For example, if Blake wanted access to the daily footage and they told her no, she could claim that refusal was retaliation for complaints she had previously made about the work environment. It didn't matter that her contract didn't grant her access to the dailies. It didn't matter that she wasn't the director or lead producer. What mattered was that she could use the retaliation clause as leverage to gain access to editing, director's cuts, soundtrack decisions, and ultimately to take over the film. Recently, I watched a legal analysis from Ask Two Lawyers, where they broke down the sexual harassment allegations Blake made. They pointed out a key question. If she hadn't made these claims, would she have been able to use the clause to gain control? Could she have pushed others out of the film without it? The answer is likely no. Blake, however, is now trying to separate herself from these extortion claims. She insists that her allegations of harassment have nothing to do with the power she gained over the production. She wants people to believe that these two things are unrelated. But is that true? Not really. The reality is that she did gain extra influence. She controlled the editing of her intimate scenes, brought in her own producers, and even had final approval over promotional images featuring her. On set, Blake Lively wasn't just an actress, she positioned herself as the one in charge. She pushed for control and even leveraged the retaliation clause to keep everyone in check. This clause essentially stated that if anyone retaliated against her in any way, she would sue them. I realized exactly how she was using this when I reviewed a letter her attorney sent to the Baldoni team back in January. Here's what happened. After Baldoni's team went public with a CRD complaint and shared it with the New York Times, his attorneys went on both the offense and defense, responding to the allegations. But because of the retaliation clause, Blake seemed to believe, quite delusionally, that she could say anything she wanted while preventing them from responding. In a letter dated December 23rd, her legal team warned Baldoni's attorneys, stating, "This letter serves to remind you of your ethical obligations, to notify you that you have defamed and engaged in unlawful retaliation against Miss Lively, and to demand that you immediately cease and desist from making further defamatory and retaliatory statements." Essentially, she thought she could file a legal complaint filled with extreme, damaging accusations, and then, due to the retaliation clause, prevent anyone from responding under the law. Her attorneys even told Baldoni's legal team that if they continued to defend themselves, there would be new defamation claims. They accused them of knowingly making false public statements, doubling down on the idea that any response was an act of retaliation. In one part of the letter, they claimed, Wayfarer Studios took proactive media measures before any inquiries even came in. But that simply wasn't true. Reading these legal documents, it all clicked. Blake truly believed that by filing the CRD complaint, she could silence Baldoni and his team. She assumed the retaliation clause would legally bind them, preventing them from ever addressing her claims. It seems like she thought she could destroy his reputation without him having any way to fight back. So, what did they do? They pushed for a gag order, arguing that Baldoni's team was retaliating and defaming her. Once again, she was using the legal system not just for protection, but as leverage, for power and control. She wanted to dominate the public narrative, take over the film, and deny them any ability to defend themselves. But here's the key fact. There was never a formal investigation into any misconduct on set. No findings were made. No HR complaint was filed. She never reached out to SAG. She didn't take any of the usual steps required for an actual workplace dispute. Instead, she used this as a strategy, a calculated move to seize control. If someone files a complaint, then turns around and uses that complaint as leverage to gain power, access, and control over a production, is it about justice or just manipulation? By wielding this clause, Blake managed to take control of the film, dictate creative decisions, and even limit what others could say publicly. She essentially forced them into silence. But here's the catch. What Blake failed to realize is that once you sue someone, they're no longer bound by secrecy. Legally, Justin Baldoni and his team could say whatever they wanted in court documents. They could even make statements that might otherwise be considered defamatory thanks to absolute privilege in litigation. This protection allows parties to speak freely in legal proceedings without fear of defamation lawsuits. That's why Blake's attempt to classify Baldoni's legal filings as defamation likely won't hold up. It all happened within the bounds of litigation. Now let's take a step back. Without this clause, would Blake have been able to gain control over the film? Absolutely not. Just look at the rhythm section, the last film she made before It Ends With Us. On that project, she had no executive control. She clashed with producers, tried to change key elements of the film, and pushed for a different vision. But the production team stood firm. They refused to cater to her demands. Without leverage, she had no choice but to accept their decisions. That film faced production delays, creative disputes, and ultimately flopped at the box office. It seems that experience taught Blake a lesson. If she wanted control, she needed leverage. And she found a way to get it on It Ends With Us, no matter the cost. Now, where does Colleen Hoover fit into all this? If Colleen wants back the rights to her book, It Starts With Us, and Blake has promised her more creative control, it raises questions. Could this entire situation be a strategic move? If Blake convinced Colleen that these legal battles could help her regain her rights, it would explain why Colleen has remained involved. Did Colleen know about the sexual harassment claims early on? Maybe, maybe not. She might not have been aware of them until mid-2024. She also might not have fully understood the extent of the retaliation clause. What Blake was telling her remains a mystery. But if there's one thing we've learned about Blake, and Ryan Reynolds as well, It's that they know how to sell a dream. They charm people, promise them influence, and make them believe they're getting something big. So, was Colleen truly in the loop about everything? Or was she simply being told exactly what she wanted to hear? Whatever Blake said to her, it was compelling enough to keep her involved. And maybe, just maybe, that's why she kept pushing the idea. If you get your rights back, I'll be there. So, if Blake Lively really wanted It Starts With Us, but Justin Baldoni refused to sell it to her, what could she do? Well, she could file a CRD complaint, weaponize the retaliation clause to silence him, and use that leverage to bury him, forcing him to sell her the rights. Just a theory, but a solid one. Now, let's pause for an update. Last week, I told you that Leslie Sloan wanted out of this lawsuit, and I also predicted that once the judge ruled on the modified protective order, they would start fighting against discovery. Does anyone remember that? Well, guess who's all ready? Refusing to provide discovery? Leslie Sloan. I called it. First, they push for the protective order. Then, when discovery requests roll in, they resist. And now, they're arguing to pause discovery entirely, claiming it's too much, too arduous, and that they shouldn't have to comply until they see if the case gets dismissed. Why? Because if it's dismissed, they won't have to turn over. Has many documents. Leslie and Blake's entire PR team clearly don't want to hand over anything. The fact that they took legal action against Justin but are now avoiding accountability speaks volumes. If they were serious about moving forward, these constant delays wouldn't be happening. Mark my words. Next, Blake and Ryan will file a motion to dismiss, then claim discovery needs to be paused. Guaranteed. This entire process feels like an intimidation tactic, an attempt to wear Justin down so they can still gain control over the film. If I were Blake's PR consultant, I'd tell her to tap. Out now before it gets worse. She needs to issue an apology, admit she miscalculated, and claim she misunderstood the situation. She could even use her personal struggles as an explanation. Blame it on stress, bad advice, or whatever excuse works. Honestly, divorcing Ryan and blaming it on mental health would be the perfect deflection strategy, because the longer she drags this out, the harder it will be to recover. But now, I want to hear from you. What do you think about this so-called morality clause? Do you think Blake and Colleen Hoover conspired together? Did Colleen see this as a way to gain control, or was she blindsided? Let me know in the comments below. And if you haven't already, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching. Bye, guys.